So what's the impact of this postponement in this case against Ace Magashule and the 16 co-accused, especially about the suspended Secretary General's political future as the ANC prepares for its 55th National Elective Conference in December? I'm joined now by political analyst Dr. Ebrahim Harvey for some insights. Good afternoon, Ebrahim. Thank you very much for your time. Welcome to today here on eNCA. Well, the court has spoken, and we just had some of the reactions there from Ace Magashule saying this is a political ploy to destroy the ANC, but his future will be hanging in the balance now when it comes to leadership of the ANC ahead of December.
Yes, Dan, thanks very much. Yeah, no, I think, well, in fact, even before today's decision, this thing, remember it's a pre-trial being postponed to January. It was very clear to my mind that Ace Magashule, though he insisted that, no attempts will stop him from participating in the elections, he didn't seem to even understand the ANC's, position. It's a very principled position that if you are charged, you cannot stand for an election. But the only way in which Ace Magashule could have participated in the elections in December was if he was acquitted in a court of law for those particular charges, which was impossible. I think this thing that he tries to do repeatedly is, it's questionable, if not false, really. What Ace Magashule has tried to do is to link his fate and future to that of the ANC. He keeps on saying that it's the ANC that's under attack. The NPA, no doubt, 70 major charges of fraud and corruption, would never have been laid, against them, Dan, if there was not a significant, credible evidence to that effect. Why would the NPA have spent so much time? And, it's thick. That docket of the charge system is thick.
And it's also interesting, sorry to come in this, it's also interesting from what you are saying about, like, he does not link to exactly what is going on in the ANC. We saw during the provincial ANC's elective conference of the ANC in different parts, like in Mpumalanga, where somebody ended up being elected to a leadership position of the ANC in that province, but facing charges, they had to step aside and not assume that role. We also saw in KwaZulu-Natal, Zandile Kumete, who's facing corruption charges. Her name was proposed for the provincial executive conference executive role, and she said no, she won't, because of the step aside. She's still facing charges in court. Why do you think Mr. Magashule would think he's different?
No, that is what strikes me as an anomaly, but he's capable of such anomalies, He should know, former Secretary General suspended now, what the rules of and how the step-aside rule has evolved. It has evolved, Dan, so much so that, don't forget, even if our President Ramaphosa, if the NPA prefers charges, he falls into the same boat. Cyril cannot participate in the re-election in December. People don't seem to get this very clear. So Ace Magashule, independent of what happened today, well, it just makes it more clear. But unless a court of law, found him not guilty for those charges, there was no way that Ace would have participated in the elections, because he's been charged, and charged very seriously. So, it's very clear now, and I think his attempt, to drag in a lot of things, like, for example, now the ESCOM thing, that suggesting that the other faction is pro-privatization of ESCOM, belies it's much more complex what is happening, the dynamics within the ESCOM. There are certainly many people who do not favor, a privatization of ESCOM, and he's suggesting that the other faction implicitly wants the outright privatization of ESCOM, and I don't know where he gets it from. It's very complex, this matter of what happened to ESCOM,
What about the argument that is sort of coming through from his statements that if the branches nominate me, I'll make myself available, but the branches of the ANC should be aware of this resolution, that they cannot even nominate him?
But then the ANC is a hell of an organization, let me tell you. And it's a very sad reflection on the understanding, not of Magashule only, but of the branches itself. Because how can he say, on what a tangible basis can he say? It flouts the agreement of the ANC, the policy of step aside. I mean, there's no branches or members of the ANC who can select, which actually would show, if they do so, how, ignorant one would have to say they are of the ANC's policy of step aside. Once you are charged, there's no Magashule or any member or branch of the ANC can impose its will and violate that policy agreement, which is very clear and can stand for elections. So I don't know, what he's trying to say.
Yeah, and the ANC has to be seen to be applying that step-aside resolution consistently, on a consistent basis. It can't be applicable to that individual and not another individual.
Absolutely. But the point must be stressed so much that, let me tell you, if I'm suggesting a hypothesis now, if, for example, the panel that's been appointed to investigate Ramaphosa with the Fala Gate scandal, if they find there's credible evidence that he should face charges, and is indeed charged, there's no way that Ramaphosa can stand in. So I'm just trying to stress that to show you, it doesn't matter who it is and what authority you have in the ANC. Once you are charged, you're finished. You cannot participate. In fact, you cannot even be elected. Gumede should not have been elected in KZN. It was wrong to have elected her.
Okay.
Because she was charged already, Dan. And they disregarded the KZN does, I think, because they think they're the biggest region of the ANC. She should not have been elected because she was charged already, Dan.
Yeah, and well, later on, we're seeing the step aside being applicable there. So just on another matter, we've spoken about Magashule. That's the main reason I wanted your insights. But because we're talking about ANC leadership, and you've mentioned the fact that if the independent panel of 3 that's led by Judge Sandile Ngobo in Parliament recommends that there are grounds on which to impeach President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, and that impeachment process begins. That was a very serious charge against, it's not a court of law, it will be in Parliament, but the process of kicking off impeachment would have serious implications. Should we then, if that happened, should we expect Mr. Ramaphosa to step aside while he's not been charged, but Parliament is looking into his fitness or not to hold office?
No, I think if I had to speak to him, I would strongly suggest that he needs to step aside. If an independent panel finds that some of Fraser's allegations and charges, is credible, then ideally you should step aside. But he knows that if he steps aside, he cannot seek re-election. But let me tell you, it doesn't end there. That is Parliament. It would have to have significant weight, the findings of that panel, to warrant the NPA to enter the scene. It is only when the law enforcement agencies, the NPA, lays charges, then you're talking of a different ball.
So this is Dr. Harvey, this is a big if we're talking about, as you said earlier, it's a scenario. We don't know what that panel will decide, but the ANC is going to have its national conference in December. Here's an overriding question with you. With a cloud, so to speak, hanging over Cyril Ramaphosa until we know what the independent panel will decide in Parliament, but there are question marks about the Pala farm saga. Magashule today told in court you must come back in January, really meaning that he can't stand. Even if the branches were to nominate him, they will also be wrong in doing so because they will not be complying with their step-aside resolution. But the ANC, therefore, is currently, would I be correct? I want to hear your insights. It's facing a very serious leadership crisis.
Absolutely. It's never been as grave as it is now, Dan. And let me tell you what has lent this unprecedented gravity to the crisis is the Pala thing. If one is honest, it is what has happened on the president's farm that has really just escalated and deepened this crisis to a point now where, really, as much as you may favor him for re-election relative to the other people and other possible contenders, he faces very serious problems, and it will deepen the crisis in the ANC. And I want to see what the Integrity Commission of the ANC does with it. If Parliament and that independent panel finds that no, there's a prima facie case against Ramaphosa, what is the Commission of the ANC going to do, and the NPA? Those are the two interrelated key questions, Dan.
Yeah, let's come back finally and very briefly to the main issue we're talking about today, which is a fact. It has happened in court, Ace Magashule's case, and then that involves himself and 16 other co-accused. More than 70 counts of corruption, fraud and money laundering being postponed to January next year. Is this it? Is this the end of the political road for Ace Magashule within the ANC, understanding that he needs to step aside?
Your last question is vitally important, because let me make it completely abundantly clear. It's the end of the road for Ace Magashule, certainly in the top 6 of the ANC, and that is leadership. You're not in the top 6 of the ANC, you're out. He's out of the ANC's top 6, and I'll tell you something, if you read the factionalist war properly in the ANC, though Ramaphosa faces serious problems now, I don't think Ace Magashule is going to come back into the ANC's top 6, and certainly not in the ANC government. I rule it out completely. I really think it's the end of the road for Ace Magashule.
Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, thank you very much for your analysis this afternoon on Today regarding the political future of Mr. Ace Magashule, the suspended ANC Secretary General, and his case, the pre-trial proceedings, let's call them that, in his case postponed to January next year. He's got a number of co-accused, I think about 16 of them. They were before the High Court in Bloemfontein today, and they are facing more than 70 counts of corruption, fraud and money laundering linked to that asbestos tender of 255 million rand in 2015. So Dr. Harvey saying it is the end of the political road in the top 6 leadership of the ANC for Mr. Magashule. I also asked him a little bit, because of December and the Phala Phala Farm scandal, whether or not the ANC is facing its biggest leadership crisis in recent times. And he says, yes, it's a very, very huge headache now for the ANC. We'll have to